Welcome to Fairy Tale Access, where the head fairy's quest is to prove that fairy tales do exist in actual time rather than once upon a time. Together, we will unravel the heroes, young and old, who turn dreams into reality. These are the people who still believe in happily ever after. The discoveries will bend even our most cynical non-believers into believing in fairy tales. Hi, welcome to Fairy Tale Access. Today I'm excited to introduce you to award-winning author Christiane Allison from Alaska by Skype with the Infinitus Saga. If you like dystopian fiction, this is definitely the series to look into. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
My pleasure. All right. So how or why did you come up with this type of saga?
So I'm the kind of author that stories land on me. And so I had been driving to work one morning and the story kind of landed in my lap. I am a big fan of science fiction and dystopian in general. So it's the kind of thing that I consume both reading and watching. It was kind of fun. I came home and I told my husband about the storyline, and he said, I don't think I've read that before. And I was like, well, that's kind of exciting because he's definitely, an addict when it comes to reading. He reads tons and tons. So that was exciting for me.
Well, you talk a lot of tough community challenges, I think. I mean, there's mental illness. There's a type of fibromyalgia. I can't pronounce
Fibromyalgia.
Thank you. And HEDS, what is HEDS?
So it's hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And that's actually the same disease that I have. So it's a rare condition. It's a genetic condition. And it's something that affects literally your entire body from your head to your toes because it affects the collagen in your body on a cellular level.
In a good way or a bad way?
Definitely not in a good way. So it can cause all kinds of things from trouble with your hormones communicating with one another to the fibromyalgia, which is a type of nerve pain that can happen through your entire body and is frequently associated. And patients that have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome can typically have up to 4 and 5 additional syndromes at the same time as the Ehlers-Danlos because they occur together and they're kind of one affects the other. Mm-hmm. And so you can end up with all kinds of symptoms and stuff that you have to battle in day-to-day life.
Wow. And you really put the character through all of them, the main character.
I did. I put her through some of them. I remember before I decided to give to have Gina have that condition in the story. I remember I was complaining to my mother one day, and I was like, "Nobody understands what it's like to live in a body like this." And she looked at me and she went, "Well, nobody's written it, have they?" I went, "Ooh, ooh, ouch." Yeah, I'm going to have to look into that. And so I did. And it ended up having a profound impact on the story and really made a much, much better story for me.
So what type of rigorous activity did you put yourself through so that you were better able to articulate what happens to the person in these extreme conditions or normal everyday conditions?
So everything that Gina goes through in the story can come about with just basic day-to-day activity. Even though she's going through a lot of intense activity, and that's what's happening to her in the story is that the activity is compounding because she's never getting a break. She's never getting a rest from everything that's happening. But a lot of the examples of things that happen to her in the story are things that I had already experienced or that I had already gone through at some point in my life because of some kind of activity. And then I had a period in my life where I went through several years of compounded stress, actually, and got very familiar with how your body can deteriorate and how the condition can worsen over time with that nonstop stress. And so a lot of that got incorporated into what happens to her.
Yeah, you put her through torture. But she was a great character, and I thought it was really good how it will just help people that either live with somebody that goes through that or has any one of those conditions to better understand them. Because I completely sympathized with her and understood where she was coming from as I got more and more into the story. And that was really important because I don't think people understand fibromyalgia. Is that how you say it?
Right.
You know, I just
fibromyalgia. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just don't think
that's
you know, because it's not something that they can see. It's not something that they can identify, that people just don't really get it.
Exactly. And that's why in a lot of cases, not all cases, but in a lot of cases, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome is classified as an invisible illness, because you may see someone out in the community that has like a handicap parking pass, or they have, you know, they're doing something odd, like they're getting into a wheelchair and they're getting out of it. And it may not, a lot of people can not understand that and think like, you know, oh, well, that person's faking, or that person, you know, doesn't really have a disability, when the reality is quite the opposite. It's the fact that, you know, we have a condition that makes it so that we can't live normally, you know, but we just have to adapt in all the ways that we have to adapt to what our condition is doing on a given day. And so it was my hope that the story both gives someone who isn't familiar with the condition a glimpse into invisible illness, and simultaneously for anybody that has Ehlers-Danlos syndrome to actually get to see a character that reflects them in an action adventure story. And that's not something you see very often.
No, and I think you gave her a good role. I don't know where book 2 is going, but this was an awesome adventure. I couldn't put it down. And you also touched on human trafficking. So what type of activist are you?
So I'm actually a criminal justice reform activist. And that comes from the fact that my family has experienced wrongful conviction. And so I'm very familiar with other activists that are involved with human trafficking, you know, activism. But that's kind of their niche, and then I kind of am alongside on the criminal justice reform side.
Oh, you can see how that plays out in the story too, in different places.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. But why a bat as a pet?
I love bats. I do. I have always loved bats. There was a portion of my life where I grew up in Missouri, kind of outside of St. Louis, and they have a lot of caves in Missouri, and so getting to see a bat is a lot more common. I do see them in Alaska occasionally, but you know, definitely not as often. And I just always loved them. I thought that they were very exciting animals. They make terrible pets, so don't have a pet for real that's a bat. Don't do it, because it's not good for them. It's not good for you. But you know, in a fiction novel, you get to do fun stuff that you wouldn't get to do in real life. So I figured now's my chance.
No, exactly. And for this story and all the, you know, mishaps and people that are looking for you, and the owl and all of it. I mean, the bat could go ahead and see for her. It could see in the night, give her, you know, tips on what's coming next. It was great. I really liked it.
Thank you. I'm glad.
So what about technology? Is that something big that you're into too?
Yeah. So technology is something that I've been heavily involved with, especially for work. Previously, I used to, for the state of Alaska, run the Alaska Career Information System. And so I was using technology on a day-to-day basis, helping people with career planning and various things like that. But I also, you know, discovered a lot of scientific articles along my journey and along the way that kind of gave me the idea for the wetware that gets grown onto the human brain, and how that could be theoretically possible, and that was really, really exciting to delve into and just, see, if you put A and B together, let's see where they go. I definitely think that technology is something that's advancing, incredibly rapidly all the time. And we expect more and more automation. We expect more and more ability for machines and computers to just understand what we want and to respond. And so I think that that's probably only going to get more. It's not going to get less.
How many books are going to be in the series?
There will be at least 4 books in the series. So, and I'm working on number 2 right now of the main novels. There is a prelude to Infinitus that's already been released. It's a novelette called The Global Fellowship. Mm-hmm. And it touches on Gina's brother Arthur and his story. But you will definitely get to see the storyline continue through at least 3 more books.
Wow. And you're really hoping that it comes together. What about the creatures that are not completely human? What are they developing into? Where do they go?
So the chimeras are very interesting as far as their role in society, because similar to how the shirkers are not accepted in society because of, they don't contribute, the chimeras are not accepted in society because they're different, and because most of the community is taught to fear them from childhood. Mm-hmm. And so it's an extremely discriminatory environment. And as the storyline continues, you're going to get to see that really advance and really change as those people kind of as a identity as the chimeras kind of take that role more prominently, more forward, and kind of step out and say, hey, this is who we are. And, like it or not, we're here with you. And, we have a role to play in society too.
That was good how it started to come out in the beginning, but the main character involved was able to hide. Essentially it was sad because he was hiding who he really was.
Right. Right.
But yeah, his sister, she was not the nicest person.
Right.
Where'd you draw on for that? How do you make evil people?
I don't know. I don't think that I'm not one of those people that thinks that there are necessarily evil people. There are people that are very heavily twisted by their environment and by their surroundings. And, I think that, with Hawk's sister, she was specifically raised to have that function, from the time that she was a child. And so, to her, being an assassin is what she is supposed to be the absolute best at. And she's very, very much focused on being the best and always trying to, Hawk mentions in the story that, she can't handle him having anything that she doesn't have, because she wants to be the best. She wants to be, always at the forefront. And so I think that just twisted her over time to the point that, she really didn't develop a respect or, a care for human life the way that you should.
Yeah, I think that was a main theme all the way through the lack of care for human life, like developing it, enriching it. Everybody was replaceable. They're just parts. We can recycle you. That was creepy.
Right. Well, and a lot of the aspects of the society that I built are things that I'm seeing in today's world, like, either suggested or trying to be implemented somewhere or, various other things. And it's like when you start breaking down the fabric of society to the point that, relationships are no longer important, let's take a look at what that looks like. Let's see if you really were to eliminate that, what the result is going to be. And I don't think that it's going to be very pretty.
Yeah, no, that wasn't pretty at all. It was really, that was crass. And it was just the whole way that you were able to, bring down that lack of value in human life and what it looked like up close to people who were, still feeling like humans. You know, and the
Right.
horror of being in the wrong place at the wrong time and escaping, but, you know, the people that didn't make it, and having the ability to have empathy for people that you barely knew.
Right.
That was key. But I mean, all those things showed up really well because of the way that you wrote it. So,
Oh, thank you.
yeah, no, the writing was really good. So do you have a background in writing, or what else do you do full time?
I've done writing off and on since I was in elementary school, and I did creative writing in college, and then I took kind of a break for it for a long period of time. When I worked for the state of Alaska, I didn't do anything creative since my bachelor's degree. I just was kind of, you know, going through the motions at work and developing new programs and things. But then when I transitioned and I started doing my master's degree, I got, you know, a good portion of the way through the curriculum, and then I hit this wall. I just absolutely face first into this wall that I could not jump over. I could not figure out what to do. And it was so frustrating for me because I felt like with that particular program that I was just regurgitating so much information, because I got a master's in business administration. And so, you know, there's just a lot of, you know, communicating back what you're taught and that kind of thing. And so I literally took a break from the program and I said, you know what, I can't do this. I'm going to take a break. And I decided to write something, and I wrote like 64 chapters in like 2.5 months. And it was a, you know, a story that I've never published and I probably never will, but, it was like this release for me, like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something creative. I'm letting all that flow, and it just made me feel so much better that after that point, I just continued writing, because I was like, this is something that I need. I'm a writer. That's what I was built to do.
We were definitely built to do that. What about the wetware technology? Is that something that you dream of coming into existence, or is there some type of wetware technology available that would better help you deal with?
Technology isn't currently, yeah, it's not currently available, and I don't know whether I dream of it or not, because to be truthful, technology is one of those things that, no matter what it is, in the right hands, it can be fantastic, and in the wrong hands, it can be terrible. And so, you know, I think that we're definitely heading that direction as far as wanting to have a more immersive environment, especially when you talk about like virtual reality and things like that, where you want to literally be able to step inside of a character and you know, act out something or play a game or whatever. And so I think that, you know, society's definitely headed there. I just don't know if we're ready for it, to be honest, because it'll be interesting to see what kind of effect it would have on the body, not just on, you know, on the technology.
Yeah, and you left us with a hangover that really hit upon like unjust incarceration, you know, not having control over your own destiny or your own body in this case.
Right. So, because, you know, in the story, you know, the wetware works fantastic for the majority of the population, but there are those exceptions. And those exceptions are things that, you know, can be very damaging or very frightening or, you know, whatever. But it's like, is it the person's fault if their wetware didn't grow correctly? You know, it's not really their fault. There's nothing really they can do about it. But they're still stuck with that situation. They're still stuck with that scenario.
What's the biggest thing that you want your readers to take away?
It's kind of a dual thing. I think that I would very much hope that if they're not familiar with disability and with invisible illness, that they would walk away with a new respect and a new understanding for what that would really be like if it was a part of their life, or, you know, the life of somebody that they know. And I think simultaneously, I would hope that they just chew on, you know, the relationships in their life, and chew on the importance of, you know, relationships and connection between human beings in general, and why that is, important to life, or what kind of an effect it has on life if it's, discouraged or banned or is not there.
Do any of the bad guys ever become redeemable?
I think so. There's one of the more colorful characters in particular in the story that is very much, a problem in the initial story. But I think that he will, you'll get to see a different side of him as the story progresses. And I kind of tell people that he's my favorite non completely good character. Like he's definitely got issues, and those issues are not necessarily going to change. But you'll get to see different sides of him, and you'll get to see what really makes him tick. So,
wow. And prior to this series, you had written children's books. Can you tell us a little about them?
Yeah. So my children's books are more directly connected to my activism. And so I have 2 children's picture books. The first one is called Why Can't Uncle Come Home? And it's the first children's picture book in the world, to my knowledge, on the subject of wrongful conviction for young children who are specifically going through one. Mm-hmm. And also to educate kids who don't know about it, more about the subject. And it takes, when we look at something like wrongful conviction as an adult, there's so much tied to it. It is such a massive topic, and there's a lot of really crazy and frightening stuff that's connected to it. But with a children's book, I take a step back from that, and it's a really simplistic comparison that talks about, a time when Timmy blamed his sister Kate when a vase got broken because he knew that he wasn't the culprit. But in reality, nobody was responsible for the vase being broken. The vase broke because the shelf broke. And so he gets to understand the importance of, not accusing somebody of something that you didn't actually see them do. And that sometimes adults face consequences for things they didn't do, just the same way that children do. And so it takes that really, really big, scary topic and just simplifies it down to the most core elements that, those children are asking about. And then the sequel to that book is called Timmy and Kate Go to Visit. And it is for any child, whether the conviction was rightful or wrongful, it doesn't matter. Any child that's going through a prison visitation experience where they're going to be going and visiting a loved one. Mm-hmm. And so it addresses a lot of the fears and the questions that they have, because as adults, we're afraid of like who else is in there and, all the rules and everything else. The child is afraid of things like that metal detector is huge and it beeps and there's a light on it and it scares me. They don't have the same kind of questions and fears that we do. And so I try to address a lot of the questions and fears that they have so that they can, discuss those things hopefully before they go in and have a much more positive experience because they know what to expect.
That's good. I'm sure there are not a lot of books on that.
No, there are not.
Do you talk with inner city schools in different areas?
I have a goal of doing that. I have not done that yet at this point. So the books are still fairly new. And so I've got a lot of outreach left to do.
And when did they both come out?
So the Why Can't Uncle Come Home came out in 2018, at the kind of the mid 2018. And then Timmy and Kate Go to Visit came out in mid 2019. And so I've done a lot of, I self-publish. And so I've been doing a lot of work on Infinitus kind of simultaneous to those two and the novelette being released. And so I've been doing a lot of writing and a lot of editing and focusing on that side of the work.
So any other hobbies, or does writing take up all your extra time?
It pretty much takes up most of my extra time with the exception of crochet. Whenever I'm, watching TV with a family member or doing something where I can do something else simultaneously, I do a lot of crochet as well. I picked that up a couple of years ago.
Really? Wow, mm-hmm. That is not what I would expect from the author of this book.
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of nephews and nieces, and so the ability to make stuffed animals is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that is a big deal. But this book is just so entertaining, and it just drags you through this saga of what these poor people are enduring and facing on a continuous basis. But I loved the connection to Al. It's kind of scary towards the end. I loved the way that all the technology played into it and what was available. Like, that would be so great to communicate with them about and have them be your lookout for you. It was really creative. So great
Thank you.
job.
I appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. It was just like, and it's heavy. So, if you do it while you're walking, it's perfect. Little exercise, little lifting.
Yep, it's definitely a tome.
Definitely. So what's any other series on the horizon?
No, mainly Infinitus for now. Where I left Gina and Hawk, and so I've got to be faithful to them and continue and show where their story is going. I'm really excited because, in Infinitus, you got to see a lot of the perspective of the community, and you got to see, kind of what that expectation was. In the books that follow, especially in the sequel, you're going to be seeing a lot more of that clash with some of the percentage of the population on Earth that still value relationships and still have relationships or maintain them. You're going to get to see more of that clash and more of that struggle between some of the characters, that internal struggle about, what is right and what is wrong. And I don't know because,
right. But
I've been told this thing my whole life.
But that happened to Hawk, the obsessive attachment syndrome.
Yes, exactly. And it's
which is why
if
so
you
many
believe
people,
that's really
yeah, but this is why so many people don't trust therapists, because, it's kind of like this.
Right. It's like, is this going to be classified as a mental illness? I don't know.
Right. And that's like, but that's just a normal, healthy relationship. That's not obsessive in any way. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's why, I was excited to put the description at the beginning of the book, because you read it and at first it's like, oh yeah, this doesn't sound like a good thing. But then you start, thinking about what those bullet points are, and it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not a bad thing. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I don't know, but that was really good. Really outstanding writing, excellent storytelling. Thank you for sharing so much of it with us today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Until next time, keep asking questions. And if you want a book that'll just tear at your heart and take you on an incredible journey, the Infinitus Saga is definitely the way to go. We'll see you soon.